It's Ivan Cage with Learn Connect Act International. You can call us LCA. And I'm here to chat with Jennifer LaRue. Jennifer, say hello to everyone.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Ivan, for having me. I'm really excited about just learning more about your thoughts on what we're talking about today. And I think there's so many similarities, and com- I think we have a similar philosophy of what you have at LCA and what we have at Citrine Synergy. So I'm super excited to talk about what we're talking about today, which I'll let you introduce.
Well, I'm excited about it too. What we have in common is a love for the topic of psychological safety.
Yes.
Now, when I think about psychological safety, Jennifer, really, you have a group of people who are high performing teams who are comfortable making mistakes and they're comfortable being in a learning environment and learn and understand that learning is really sometimes failure and they can learn from failure, and everyone is open and they can share their ideas, and they are better innovators because of that and better decision makers. So all of that sort of encompasses what I believe psychological safety is all about. Why do you like psychological safety so much? Why is that as a topic, is that really of interest to you?
For all the reasons you said, like the understanding that failure is a way of learning and growth. But I think what it comes down to is, in order to have psychological safety with people, you first have to recognize that we're all human
Hmm.
and that we are all there to learn, to grow, but it stems from being human, and humans are not perfect. And
Right.
the most beautiful things that come out of the human race are the imperfection
Mhm.
that we bring to it. And that is where all the learning and the joy and the new ideas come from. But you can't put yourself out there in that way unless you have psychological safety, unless you're willing to be vulnerable and willing to put yourself out there and know that if you fall a little bit, because everyone is human, somebody will be there to catch you. And
That's
that's to
right.
me what is about psychological safety.
But it's so interesting that you said all about being human and being okay with sort of making those connections and not feeling that someone is going to judge you
Yes.
because of some of the way you think or the way you feel about things. But Jennifer, we both know that people sometimes really don't create environments where there is psychological safety. Why do you
Oh,
think that is? Why do you think that in your history of facilitating and consulting with people, why don't people create environments where there is psychological safety?
I think it's for a few reasons. One, I think it's just historically we've needed to operate from a place of perfection where
Mm,
failure is not accepted and it's not seen as a way of learning and growth, but as a failure.
hmm.
But this week I was working with somebody and she had a magnet that said failure is a bruise, it's not a tattoo. So it's temporary.
Yeah.
And so when you think of failure, it's about, I believe in failing, but fail fast. Know that you're willing to try things. And so how do we create that environment where eventually you have to be perfect? I get it.
Hmm.
Like, or get to the perfect that makes sense for you. I don't think anything is ever perfect. I think we can
Hmm.
always be working harder unless it's like an airplane engine. I'm okay with a little imperfection there,
Right.
right?
But not with an
Um,
airplane engine.
yeah,
With an
no,
airplane engine, I want perfection.
exactly. There are certain things we need some perfection on, but
Yeah.
there are certain things where you can try and you can try new things. And I think it just brings so much beauty for the through the world. And there's another great quote is everything needs to have a crack because that's where the light gets in, right?
Yeah.
So
Love that.
and so
Love
I
that.
just think, like, how can we not see it as failure but
Yeah.
as learning,
Yeah.
right? And I
Right.
think prior generations from, now or prior years or whatever needed that perfection. And when you've been conditioned that that's how you operate, it's really hard to change that mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so funny that you're saying that because as I'm now in the throes of either designing content around psychological safety or
Mhm.
working with people to sort of facilitate the conversation, what I'm finding myself doing a lot more often that I wasn't doing in the past that's really working is juxtaposing psychological safety with psychological danger. And so
Yeah.
when I talk to people about psychological danger, I kind of like take all of the reverse points I said earlier. It's the fear of admitting mistakes, you blaming others in your environment. And the team really, they're less likely to share their different views if you have psychological danger. And this is, and in psychological danger, it's too allowing the group dynamics to affect the decisions your groups making.
Yeah.
So all of those things now juxtaposing the two, and all I do is say now, which world do you want to live in? Right?
Yeah. Yeah,
I love it.
and I then when you were talking about psychological danger, I kinda, like, took a deep breath and was like, "Ooh, I don't wanna live there. I don't wanna
Yes.
feel that way." And so, how does it feel when you're willing to try and you're supported and you feel that you can be your true self versus when you have to leave your whole self at home and become this new
Mm,
person? And that's what happens when you don't have psychological safety.
that's
you
right.
can't you can't really be who you are, and the beauty of what you bring to an organization is who you are. It is your individual strengths. It's not somebody else's, so be you.
The
Bring
beauty
you.
of what you bring to the organization is you. I love that, Jennifer.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that. There's an equation when I'm training psychological safety now. I like to throw out an equation because I tend to in a lot of cases train engineers, and they need some equation or some sort of mathematical something
Yeah.
or other. And so I have this equation now that I'm using. I say you take care personally plus challenge directly, and that equals radical candor. So if
Yes.
you care enough and you challenge each other enough, and you can be radically candid with one another, you create an
Yeah.
environment where people can flourish. And they created
Yeah.
that environment that you talked about where you bring your full self to work.
Yeah.
Because I always say this to people don't bring their heads to work, they bring their heads and their heart to work, right?
Yeah. Yeah, when I'm working with teams and I remember thinking, I that whole old saying, it's not work, it's not personal, it's work. You know,
Yes.
it's not meant to be personal, but it
Yeah.
is because we spend
Yes.
most of our time at work. We
Right.
spend more time with the people we work with than sometimes our partners or our family.
It's true.
And so, and again, we're going to use more quotes because that's what works. And this is something I learned, and I don't know where it came from. And I think it's okay. Oh, I can't think of it, but it's something about it's never okay not to bring yourself to work. It's
Mm,
never okay to leave your whole self at home because otherwise you're just going to have cracks in your system, right? You're not going to be able to really celebrate who you are.
right.
And I don't know, I just think we spend so much time on focusing on where we can get better. And yes, there's always going to be places we can get better. We're never going to be perfect. But if
Yeah.
we focus on the things we are good at, those will become the shining stars in our lives. And we can
Absolutely.
get somebody else to take care of the things we're not good at because, like you and I thank God for engineers because they will make sure the airplane engine is built right. I
That's
mean,
right.
exactly. And so I need them in my life. Whereas I will make sure that the experience of people getting on that airplane is better because it'll be more fun.
Absolutely.
So we all bring
Absolutely.
something to the table, but it's
That's
making
right.
sure what the best thing for you to bring to the table is.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the conversation around psychological safety is pregnant with possibilities. So
Mhm.
much to talk about. But if you were to say, just before we close our chat today,
Yeah.
if you were to say, if you are a leader in an organization and this is the one thing you can do to ensure that you start really, really achieving and building psychological safety in your organization, what kind of advice would you give to a leader?
Oh, that's a great question. There's a couple things. I mean, the simplest thing is to not be afraid to show how you have made mistakes and how you have failed. But
Hmm.
I think the biggest thing is share your whole process because so often we share that outcome of where we got to, but we don't share where we made the missteps or where we had to try things. And so share the whole process. Share that you had to maybe pivot or change or do things differently to get to that great result, and share that that's okay. Because that'll give people permission to share their process and create new ways of working. So share your
Absolutely.
process, not just the
Wow.
outcome.
Two wonderful pieces of advice, Jennifer LaRue. Thank you
Oh,
so much.
thank you, Ivan Cage.
And thank you for being with me today. And now that we've had this chat, tell us what you think. If you have any questions, please get in touch with Jennifer or myself. We'd be happy to talk to you. And say goodbye to the people, Jennifer.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
See you.